Hi, welcome to Business and Influencers. My name is Chris Salem, your host. You found us here at TALRadio, part of the Touch of Life Foundation, and we hope that you are enjoying the TALRadio platform. We've been now here on the business platform since its inception almost 4 years ago. It's hard to believe it has been 4 years, but again, we want to thank you, the listeners, each and every week joining us here at Business Influencers, as we are committed each and every week in bringing in subject matter experts that can help take your business and personal brand to the next level through the power of influence. Again, if there's any content that you would like to hear on a future show, feel free to reach out to us here at Christophersalem.com. Today's show is being brought to you today by Alumni Direct. Alumni Direct is a new social media community platform dedicated to bringing alumni together from all different generational types and an opportunity to meet new people for the first time. Now, this is a membership program, but it takes out all the noise of social media. No more of those noisy notifications. You get to come in and generate genuine and authentic relationships with the people you choose to interact with and share the content that you choose to want to be surrounded by. So again, it is highly authentic and customized to your experience. And it features a wide array of different membership accessories that you could use for personal and professional development that are not available to the general public. If you'd like some more information about Alumni Direct, check them out at alumnidirect.com. That's alumnidirect.com. Well, we got a great show for you today. We're going to be talking about kickstarting your brand the right way. Yeah, this is for you startup companies or those companies kind of pivoting or revamping your direction. Well, you are in the right place. We are going to be talking here today with David Card. David is the CEO and founder of C42D, one of New York City's premier branding agencies for startups, which he started in 2010. And 15 years later, they're still going strong, helping startup companies or companies that are revamping their direction the right way. And you're going to be hearing a lot of insights from him today. Now, over the years, he has been honored to work for Facebook, Reebok, Ogilvy, Shazam, Chanel, YouTube, Kindbody, and many startups, especially in the healthcare category. Now, their work has helped clients collectively raise over $1 billion in capital post-brand launch, and they pride themselves on doing outstanding work and being easy to work with. And that is so important. I can tell you in the marketing and branding world, it's so important. You got to make sure you can work hand in hand. And the list goes on and on and on. You're gonna learn more about how to get in contact with David and how you can learn more about him here later in the show. And without further ado, we welcome David Card to the show. David, how you doing today?
Doing great, thanks. Thanks for the intro. I feel like a really important person after all that.
Well, you are. Every guest subject matter expert we have on is important to us, and we always like to start off with what got you into this business, helping brands establish the right way to connect with their audience, especially in the beginning. What led you down this path and through your experience working for, big entities like Ogilvy and some of the brands that you've worked for, that where you are today helping brands?
Yeah, it's a great question. And, I would say that I kind of fell into it by accident, if you can believe it or not. I started my business just as a freelance designer. I was doing a lot of freelance work for some relationships and some clients that I had from a past job that I had. So I was freelancing, doing lots of great work for Reebok. And, one day I woke up and I just realized I'm like, wow, this is like turning into a business now.
Yeah.
Like I gotta actually start, maybe hiring some people and stuff. So we did that, and we brought on some people, and it was around that time that, we got Facebook as a client, and we were doing a lot of presentations at that time. Apple had just come out with Keynote, and there was a tremendous demand for people who could do really, really good presentations. So we did that for about 6 or 7 years. My team grew to about 15 people. And then we hit this inflection point where some of our really big clients decide they want to take the work back in-house. And I knew at that time, that was a lot of our revenue and everything. So we had to pivot and we had to come up with a new plan. And that's when we started, because we had been working with companies like Facebook. We really
Yeah.
loved the startup culture. So then we got into doing branding for startups, and that's when we came up with We Brand Unicorns, and all that stuff.
I can relate to where you were because I prior to what I do, not only as a podcast and radio show host, but I run a consulting company that we do business acceleration. But my prior business was in media, where we used to help work with smaller publishers. This is before where things are today with all the technology. This is even going back to the old print days, but where we would help publishers build up their advertising base because we had the capacity and the scale to do that faster than they could. And once they got it, where it was in place, they could just manage it and they didn't need our services. So I know exactly what you're saying.
Yeah.
And that's why that business model doesn't work for me anymore. And that's why I got out of it a number of years ago. But nonetheless, I can relate to that. So going forward, let's talk about, any brand that's, starting out and, what is the most important thing that you recommend to businesses when you're working with them, when they start thinking about a brand strategy, how to establish themselves in alignment with the audience or audiences that they're going to serve?
Yeah, so I think, the first thing is, they got to be willing to do some work, and to really, sit down and think about these things. And they probably haven't up until this point, which is okay. We work with lots of companies at that stage where they've, sort of just starting to build their product, and now it's time to start thinking about the brand. So I'd say, the most important thing is to, really be honest about the mark that you want to make on the world, and think about, aside from making money, like, what's important about this company? Like, what are you really trying to do? Um, the other thing is like really thinking deeply about your audiences and what they want. I think the biggest mistake, early stage founders make is trying to build a brand that they like, and not necessarily thinking about the audience and the customers and what
Mm.
they want. And that's probably the most important thing to keep in mind, is that you're not building this for yourself. It's not a vanity project. This is marketing is meant to reach a specific audience, and you really have to put yourself in their shoes.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Absolutely. No, it's great, great advice. And we hope any of you out there listening that, again, if you're in this particular area of just starting out, take hold of what David shared. And, it's so, so, so important. And knowing your audience too, I would think that, not just assuming what your audience is and how you're going to help. So I love what you share there. David, help us walk us through if there's a checklist other than what you've just shared, like a process that you walk them through that's going to get them, to really establish their brand in a very strong way to, give them that footprint that they can now build on. It's kind of similar to what when you were working with Facebook at the time.
Yeah, so the process for building, a strong brand is not necessarily rocket science, but it is a process, and it does need to be followed from start to finish. So, the things that, you should be prepared to do, and what we're going to do is, we're going to want to have all the information we can from you about the brand so we can sit down and start doing some research. We need to know who your competitors are. We need to know who your audience is, and, what you provide to them that nobody else does. What's unique? Like, what's the only thing that you do that nobody else does? And that might be hard to do, like that might be hard
Oh
to think
yeah.
about and nail down. But that onlyness, as we put it, is a really important quality. Um, and what we're going to do is we're going to do interviews with the management team, potentially with some of their customers, so we can, understand their point of view. We're going to do research. We're going to look at the competitors and see how they're showing up, both visually, like what colors are they using, what messages are they saying, how are they positioning themselves? Because we want to find that empty space where nobody else is, where we can position your company, where you can grow and you can thrive. So that process, it starts with research and discovery. It goes into building a brand strategy. So actually, putting down, into words, how you're going to talk about things like your product, your value proposition, your mission, your vision, what personality traits is this brand going to be all about? And we get into I'm not going to go super deep here, but we get into things like archetypes and things like that. But once that strategy and personality are figured out, then we're going to start bringing it to life visually and making mood boards and having deep conversations with the client about how this brand can come to life. And then from there, we get into identity design and brand guidelines and websites and all that good stuff.
Oh, nice. Love it. Love it. Great insights to what you shared. And, in terms of a brand, like, when you get them to kind of really, start off the right way, you establish that footprint where they can build on, where does it go? Does the brand evolve to where it started, or can it change as their industry changes or their customers change, their audience change, that type of thing? How you go about navigating that?
Yeah. So, any brand's going to change over time, and you don't have to look too far back in time to see, that, Coca-Cola of the 1950s, isn't the same as the Coca-Cola in
Yes.
2025. So times change, people change, culture changes, and yeah, you do want to keep up with that. So I think you should have a mindset of always be willing to evolve. Now, ideally, you don't want to be changing your logo. And actually, I've mentioned
Yes.
Reebok as the client. They actually we worked with them at the design studio I was at for about 7 or 8 years, and they changed their logo at least 9 times over
Oh
that
my
time.
God.
It was insane. I mean, it was really crazy. So ideally, you don't want to be doing that. And sorry, Reebok, I love you guys, but you know, it's
But
sort of
no,
an
I
inside
agree,
joke.
because that can be confusing to the,
Yeah, it can create confusion.
yeah, yeah,
Exactly. But other qualities of your brand, can evolve, and your color palette can change as times go on, and even logos get updated,
yeah,
over
yep,
long periods of time, and you don't have to look back too far to see lots of examples of that. So
yes.
I think try to stay true to your core, but be willing to evolve and change with the times.
Got it. That's great. Great advice. And what would be some things like, when you're building a brand, obviously what makes you compelling, what makes you unique, does whatever, you're putting out there, does it align with maybe a challenge that your audience has that could be better, results they're seeking than don't have, that type of thing. How about, like, how important the concept of values, like, the core values that your company operates from, do they align with, the industry or industries that you're serving? Is that important as part of the brand as well?
Yeah, absolutely. Core values are often, not often, but sometimes overlooked. But a lot of times people misplace, the story that they really tell. And the story they really tell is the story of your company culture. Now, that can be valuable to potential customers, but where it really hits home is for potential hires, for people who you want to
Hmm.
bring onto your team. So, uncovering your values and, understanding like what you stand for and all that stuff, that's great stuff to put on your about page or your team page, because that speaks directly to what you're about besides making money. Like what's your culture like as a company? And people want to know that stuff, before they're going to put in the time to potentially, interview or apply for a job there, like, is this the type of team I want to
Yeah.
join? So that's
Yeah.
a really important piece of it. And, defining that has all kinds of benefits, primarily for, human resources purposes.
Yeah. I would say, even like you said, because your company is a reflection of the inside out. Like, what you do on the inside reflects outward to the connection and the experience that you're creating for the audience or industry that you're serving. And I could definitely see that those values are important, because if your brand can't build rapport and trust, then people are not going to buy if they can't trust you or even respect you at that very, if you're putting that into context as well. There's got to be that trust and then respect. So, yeah, I could totally align with that, especially, being the inside out. If your employees don't trust you and they don't respect you, then how are your
Yeah,
customers going to do the same?
they're
You
not.
might be able to hide it, but I don't think you'll hide it too long.
Exactly.
No, so true. So true. And when walk us through the process, like when you're working with a client, a startup, are they, how does that work? Is it like more like, now we live in the virtual world where we can do everything through, platforms like Zoom and Teams and other types of platforms that are out there. Do you guys go out to the client or do they come to you? Is it a combination of both? Like, how does that usually work with the process to get, to develop the best kind of process and campaign for them to succeed?
Yeah. So in terms of working with clients, before the pandemic, we would do a lot of work
Yeah,
in
yeah.
person and we would meet people, and then
And COVID changed a lot of that. Yeah.
suddenly it's all become virtual. But the technology is really great these days. Thank God. We live in a great country where people develop solutions all the time. But platforms like Miro make it real easy to do workshops and whiteboarding,
Yep.
and obviously Zoom and all the other stuff make it easy to do it virtually. I think nothing really can replace being in person, and we want to be in person with folks. If they're in New York,
Yeah.
we can certainly do that. But these days, like workshopping and interviewing and all that stuff, it can be done over Zoom. And actually, with AI now, you're kind of getting like automatic transcripts and summaries these days too, which is something we didn't have, which is
Yeah,
really
yeah.
handy.
With the AI, yeah, I use that a lot with my executive coaching, and even when I'm working with some smaller companies, we use the AI tool to transcribe, the what we shared, what we discussed, the action items, next steps, that type of thing. Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, we're just getting into this now, but we're starting to look at tools like Perplexity,
Oh
to
yeah.
actually help us with, the strategizing part of it as well. We've got a really fairly complicated project we're working on now where it's one company purchased multiple other companies, and they're trying to figure out how to consolidate all these brands. And we have like literally like dozens of transcripts of interviews and stuff. So I'm trying to experiment a little bit with some AI tool. Like, can I upload all these transcripts and get an overview of the situation? Jury's still out on that. Nothing replaces human thought, but
No, no, human
it's
thought,
certainly
but
interesting to
I,
to experiment with.
I agree 100%. I always, like I said, if you depend upon a tool or resource, that's not going to be a good thing. But if it can
Yeah.
complement what you're doing, I'm a big fan of Perplexity Pro. I use it as a benchmark for a lot of my clients for research, more from a macro point of view, so I can identify what are some of the common challenges that industry or they're having, and then what are some of the results I seek. So it kind of gives me an idea. Then I can then do some one-to-one or polling, surveying to get more specifics from people in the industry to kind of substantiate that to now build a case to say, hey, here's where we got to align your focus on with sales strategies or that type of thing. So I think that
hmm
what you mentioned, it is a great tool. And I can see where it could be helpful in the branding strategy space as well. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It's changing really fast, and a lot of real exciting stuff coming down the pipe.
Wow. No, it's so great. And walk us through like a process. Like, every client, it's going to not always be the same. It's not always apples to apples. You're going to have apples to oranges, grapes to bananas, that type of thing. So, when you work with somebody, is it like you're, within who you have in your team, you're designating certain people that are going to play an important role in each process or each step to how to go from A to whatever Z in that process? If you could kind of walk us through that a little bit.
Yeah. So, like I said earlier, the process starts with discovery and strategy, and that's
Yep.
primarily headed up by our brand strategist.
Yep.
And lately, we've been working with a fellow named Clinton Barnes. He's fantastic. And so that's all. That's all primarily strategy. Getting together the brand personality and all that. Then we move into visual strategy. Now we're starting to get visual. So now we bring in our art director,
Yep.
Allison, and she's going to start putting down, rationale. So we're not just saying like, hey, we're selecting the color yellow. We're selecting the color yellow, because it symbolizes hope and optimism. And those are qualities from your previous stage where
Yep.
we identified that in the brand strategy. As we transition out of that into the website, then we're going to bring in, our senior digital designer. And I should also say that each stage has its own kickoff where, we sit down with the client, we talk about here's what you can expect from the stage. Here's some questions and exercise we're going to do. So we're all sharing the same, visual vocabulary. And yeah, and it's really great. And of course, throughout the whole process, we've got a project manager at the center of everything who's, keeping everything on track, managing all the communications and everything. So we've got that through line. So, people come and go throughout the process as it goes. But there's always like this line of continuity through the whole thing. And I think people like that.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. And I love how you kind of established that up front. So, it makes it simple for them to understand what the process is and how you move forward. As we move along here in the show and what you've shared, what are some of the things like, some of the best advice you can give, anybody that could be listening right now that could say, hey, we got to start, we're relatively new, or we're maybe we're shifting gears here, and we've never done brand strategy. We never even worked with a branding agency like yourself. What would be that advice that you could recommend them? Why would this would be an important part of growth in their business? If they've just been doing it through word of mouth, or just people that have just been connecting them up to this point.
Yeah, historically speaking, you can look back and see that companies that invest in brand or have highly regarded brands, there's an unquestionable return on investment (ROI) on that. You don't have to look any farther than a company like Apple to see that.
Yeah.
Um, but I would say if you're considering doing this, be prepared to try to find an agency, that has the right fit. So you want to make sure you find the right team that you can vibe with. There's all kinds of price points. It could be anywhere from 2,000 to 200,000, and thinking ahead of time of what you can budget towards that, because you're going to get different things for those price points. And not to say that you can't do a good job on a lower budget, but there's different things that you get for different prices, and you should really seek to understand, because it's not apples to apples.
Yeah.
So there's going to be all different types of solutions, and it can be a little confusing to try and navigate that.
Yeah.
So you got
But
to
do your
find
due diligence. Do
what's
your due
right for.
diligence.
Do your due diligence. Find the right team that you have chemistry with, and really understand what they're going to do for you and what that's going to cost and how long
Got it.
it's going to take.
Love it. Love it.
And
Love what
all
you shared
startups
there.
want it done in 2 weeks, and I'm sorry, guys. We need at least four. We need at least 4 weeks. Okay.
No, it's great, great. So as we near the final show, before I wanted to let people know how to find you, what would be a final thought that you'd like to share? It could either be a recap what you shared or anything that you haven't. If you'd like to, for a minute, share what that would be here with the audience and those listening, later here on demand.
Yeah, just as a final thought, I would just say, don't undervalue your brand as an asset towards your company. You've got your people, you've got your product, but your brand's equally as important, and it's worth putting in the time and the money and the personal soul searching and effort to really get it right and to do it right. And if you can do that, if you can put in that work and get it right the first time, you never have to go back and do it again. And that's a wonderful thing.
Absolutely. Well, David, I want to thank you personally and also from the team here at TALRadio for taking the time out of your schedule to be with us here today. We greatly appreciate you. What is the best way that, people can get in contact with you, what you're up to, and anything that you'd like to share or provide the audience?
Yeah, sure. You can see me on LinkedIn. I've been trying to post there almost every day, so I'm always posting, insights and thoughts and stuff from my experience. So if you just search for David Card on LinkedIn, I have the exact URL, but I'm sure I'll come up. And you can go to our website at c42d.com, and you can see all of our work and learn more about us as a company there.
Awesome. And we'll make sure, again, all the David's contact information will be in the show notes as well. So, that way you'll be able to find it. But we highly encourage you, especially for, startups, businesses that are, changing direction. Again, this is very important as David shared. Branding is not just something to take lightly. It's something that can make a difference in where you are and where you want to be. And at the very least, having a conversation with David or somebody on his team to talk about it and to get some further information as part of your due diligence. We highly recommend all of you do that. So
I'll just end with one thought too, because
sure.
you made me think of something. So you said, branding's important. If you need another example of that, look at the beverage company Poppy. It was just bought by Pepsi for 3.2 billion. And if you look at what their brand looked before, and what it looks like now, you can see where that value is coming from. So
Absolutely. It's a difference between some extra zeros at the end, right?
a lot of zeros get
A
you
lot of
three
zeros there in
commas
this
and a lot
case.
of zero.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, David, thank you so much. Again, we appreciate you and thank you for taking the time to be with us here today.
Thank you. Enjoyed the conversation.
Thank you. And listeners, we want to thank you joining us each and every week. Again, we are committed to bringing subject matter experts like David in each and every week to share their words of wisdom and insights to help elevate you and your business and level of influence to the next level. We encourage you again to listen to the show again in its entirety to get more insights and reach out to David when you get a chance. And again, we will see you next week at the same time here at Business Influencers as part of the TALRadio acronym for Touch of Life Foundation. We'll see you then and take care.